Hello and welcome to a Penjee video on best practices for writing loops. The goal of this video is really twofold. It is a refresher on syntax. We're going to be looking at some syntax issues, but the main goal is specifically how to solve the next assignment that you're going to do as soon as this video is over. But while we're doing that, we're going to come up with a general strategy for solving more complex assignments like the next one and many future ones. So first off, let's do a refresher on syntax. So up on the board is a reminder of how we set up the if, elif, else control structure. If you remember, the if test goes first, and then you can have as many of these elifs as you need. Um, and up until now, we've only needed one elif, but that's about to change in the next assignment, and increasingly you'll find that you need multiple elifs, which of course stands for else if. And then lastly, remember the last statement is just else, with else is just else colon, and typically in Penjee, that's when we waddle onwards. And the ifs and the various elifs handle the different special cases. And right here you can see a reminder of the control flow, which is that the first thing that the Python interpreter will evaluate is the if test. And only if the if test is false do we then go down to the elif, and it keeps going and cascading down, giving each one a shot until the first one that's true, and that one executes. Right? So in order to get to the else statement, the if has to be false, the elif has to be false, and then else always executes. Up until now, you've been seeing assignments that look similar to what's on the board here, where we have basically three cases. And in this assignment, there's a case one where there's a fish on the right. Remember, the penguin's going down, so in that case, fish will be on the right. Case one, fish on right. Case two, water on the left. And our standard case three is where you're just going to waddle onwards and if necessary, grab. In this case, we did that because there were always fish here. And our case three, where you waddle and grab. So when there's three cases, we can do an if, elif, else. All right, it's worked very well up until now, but things are going to get a little more complicated in the upcoming assignments. This is what the map is going to look like in the assignment that follows this video. And at first glance, it may not look too different. You can probably tell that the penguin's going to go down this column here, and it's going to deal with different things on the left and the right. But if you start looking carefully, you're going to realize it is a little bit more complicated than what we've been working on. Because if you look at it, there's actually four cases for the first time. There's if there's a fish on the right, again going downward, so the fish will be on the right side. There is what about when there's a cube on the left, right? If there's a cube on the left. Rock on the right is the third case. There's various times that there's a rock on the right. And our last case, of course, we're going to just waddle onwards, right? So this is the first time where we have four different cases to work through, and I'm going to help you start off the code for this, and you'll just have to finish it up. But after watching this video, you should take with you a good chunk of code that'll be the foundation for the next assignment, and also, kind of most importantly, a general strategy for solving increasingly complicated challenges. Challenges where there's four cases, or as we move onward, maybe five or six or seven. And if you approach these in the way that we're about to go over, your life will be much easier. Okay, so the general strategy, you're going to want to do two things first. First thing, kind of obviously, is you're going to want to instantiate your penguin as instructed or as needed. And the second thing we're going to do is write a while loop. Don't forget your colon, and we're going to indent everything inside there. All right, so nothing too new yet. But here's where I'd like to beg you to please not rush ahead and try to write the entire program all at once. Be a programmer. All right, what an experienced programmer is going to do here is he or she is going to break down the program into smaller parts and work on each part and perfect each part before adding additional parts. Many people who first start programming want to rush into a map like this and try to do all four, are going to want to try to do all 4 cases at once before they even run the code. It's a huge mistake. It's going to lead to difficulty debugging your code, and it's going to end up taking much more time than first honing in on one case and making sure that works. Then moving on to case 2, and then case 3. Let's do that together. So first off, I want to point out I did change my penguin name from Pan to Penjee. You just have to pick one penguin name and stick with it, and we'll be using Penjee for the rest of this, right? So we have the instantiation, we have the while loop, and so what did I do? I wrote the if-else, and now I want to test it out. I want to make sure that this code that I wrote here gets the fish in that one test case. So I'm just going to run the code and make sure there's no problems. Okay, so I like what I see. As you can tell from this is just an animation I took of running the code on the left in Penjee, and you can see that if there is a fish on the right, that test case, which occurs 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, that if test is done perfectly. And my else test also works. So right now, what I know is that I'm starting the penguin in the right spot, at least it looks that way. My while loop seems to be correct. It gets me to where I want to go. My if test works perfectly, and now I just have to deal with some other cases. We're going to go back to our process and look at this here. We dealt with case 1. We always have the else waddle down there. And now you could either do case 2 or case 3. Again, unless there's some strong reason, unless you see something that would make one case go before the other, it probably won't matter. And in this case, it doesn't. I'm going to do the Elif Penjee is cube left, right? So I deal with these cube situations here. The main idea here is we wrote the while loop, we wrote our if else, and now we're going to go in and we're going to add our elifs in the middle of the code here. Elif Penjee is cube left, and once you think you've got the code correct, you want to test it out, right? Here is actually the code on the left. We're going to test this just like our other assignments, and we're just going to run it, and as you can see, that code works. And we're just going to continue going through this process. We added an elif to check for the cubes, and that works perfectly, and we're going to just look at the last test case that exists, which is the rock. Right, so you're going to add an elif. So I can't fit all the code anymore in here, but here's the elif is cube left, and you can see that here's all the code. And the last thing you're going to have to do is deal with the final case where there is a rock on the right. Again, implementation not shown. I'll let you write the code for that, but that will be the final elif that you'll need. And while I have your attention, I just want to point out a nice little kind of shortcut for people who like shortcuts. Whenever you have to turn around in front of a cube, you don't have to turn right, or turn left, right? Typically to turn around, you have to turn twice. But if you waddle into a cube, it turns you around, right? So just a nice sort of time saving tip. If you have to turn around 180 degrees and you're looking at a cube, you can cut down on how many instructions you write by just writing waddle once, because if you waddle into a cube, it turns you around completely. All right, but that is the general strategies for solving these loops. Let me just go over the big points in this general strategy one last time. All right, so just to summarize the general strategy for solving this and pretty much all future assignments is to instantiate your penguin, write your while loop by asking yourself what is different about the map where I want to end, and then, very importantly, to be a programmer and not to try to do the entire program all at once, but instead to break it down into smaller parts and test and debug each part before you move on to your other ones. And the way that we do that specifically, of course, is just to start off with the if-else, right? We had an if-else first, and then to start filling in the elifs in the middle. Okay, so I hope that you listen to these strategies and make your life a lot easier as you go through the rest of Penjee.